What's up, Lucky Gamers? It's Lucky Lux, and today we're going to be talking about the characters on this selective summon. So I'm going to be going over all these characters, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to be ranking them on a tier list, because I know a lot of you guys love tier lists. So I'm going to do that for you. That way you know exactly what character that you want to go for. Since I have played with most of these characters, literally the only characters I haven't played with is like 2 of them. But I can give you all the information that you need. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop into the video. All right, so first up we have Cascarson. He is a slasher element fire. Really interesting character. Has a chance to burst enemies down with his kit. Let's go ahead and go over that. So with the S1, he deals 90% of attack to a target. On the Alpha, 20% chance to reduce Red Sand Wolf's cooldown by 1. The Beta, increased damage by 30% in Black Myth. And just remember, you pick one or the other. For those of you who are new to this game, you don't get both, unfortunately. On the S2, deals 100% of attack to a target, times 2 damage in Black Myth. His Alpha, attacking will never miss. Beta, heals self for 30% of his HP if a target is dead by this skill. And the S3, deals 160% of attack to a target, grant self Black Myth for 1 turn. On the Alpha, accelerates himself by 50%, and on the Beta, increase Black Myth duration by 1 turn. And Black Myth lowers your defense all the way down to 0, and attack is increased. Doesn't give a value, wasn't able to find that. This is one of the characters that I actually wasn't able to get, but I've seen him work. So he does a lot of damage. Yes, the S3 has 160 percent multiplier, and then while you have your attack increase, you're also doubling the damage that you do with Black Myth. So he is a nuker, but the lowered defense is honestly pretty heavy. If you don't build him fast, or you don't use his Alpha, he will get hit really hard. The S2, he can only heal if he kills the target, so you can't really use that on bosses, so you have to use the Alpha, which the Alpha is good, because then you can hit water units and not worry about just randomly missing, right, when you're trying to get your damage. On his S1, you can lower the cooldown of his ult, or just increase its damage. And on the ult itself, like, the increasing Black Myth duration is cool, but if you get hit, it's gonna hurt a lot, honestly. But he's decent, but again, he's a single target character. And while I was playing through the story, single target characters just don't do as well if there isn't a boss, because you're typically fighting for enemies, and some of these enemies start hitting harder throughout the story, and you really need somebody to clean them up. So when you're on the selective summon, just going for a 3-star who's going to be the one leading your team, basically, the single target characters are they're going to be great in certain situations, but they're going to lack in others. So that's pretty much how I'm going to judge a lot of these single target characters. Like, outside of bosses and those boss rounds, it's going to be a struggle for you, especially if the rest of your team members aren't that great. So, I wouldn't really rank him that high, but we'll get to that at the end. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead and move on. All right, so next up we have Gaffs. Gaffs I actually played with on my on another account that I had, and he was honestly pretty awesome. Because of his kit, he's able to lower his cooldowns by quite a bit, and his skill upgrades are pretty nice. On his S1, he deals 80% of attack. The Alpha, 30% chance to take extra turn, and on the Beta, 40% chance to reduce Blazing Rise cooldown by 1. On the S2, deals 110% of attack to a target, reducing Proof of Loyalty cooldown by 1. On the Alpha, reduces Proof of Loyalty cooldown by 1 on a crit hit. And on the Beta, creates shield to self with HP equal to 20% of dealing damage for 2 turns. So basically, he gives him a shield for 20% of the damage he does on his S2. On his S3, deals 160% of attack to a target. On the Alpha, grants himself attack up for 2 turns. On the Beta, grants self dodge up for 2 turns. So, a character that is single target again, right? We just talked about it. But you saw a lot of lowering cooldowns, right? So, the cooldown for his ult is 4. The cooldown for his S2 is 4. And then he has his S1, which of course can give him an extra turn or lower the cooldown of the S2, and then the S2 lowers the cooldown of the S3. So he's kind of considered one of the better single targets, because he can get his abilities back so quick. Because imagine you S3, right? And then you hit the S2. Let's say you get the alpha, you reduce your cooldown of this ability by 2 turns, and then you hit an S1, right? Let's say you have the alpha, you get an extra turn, hit the S1. Now you're back to your S3, and you can repeat that cycle, right? Honestly, pretty crazy. You can get a lot of damage off that way. Now, of course, if you have the beta on the S1, then you can get a chance to, you know, get the alpha, but he also can create a shield and give himself tanky. There is a pre-core that allows you to heal yourself when you're doing damage, so he can honestly be a like sub tank for you as well going throughout the story if you have him leveled up. But I will rank him a little higher than Cascarson only because like he has no negatives when it comes to, you know, him getting his damage on his S3. You can get it attack up. He can cycle his kit very quickly on his own and has some sustain that doesn't require you killing somebody. So that is something that I do have to rank pretty high. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, so this next character, I'm just gonna call her Kipu. She is a mage. She is a dark element. You play with her throughout the story, so you kind of get to see what she's like. Honestly, she does some interesting things. She's like Chloe from Dislight, where she can steal buffs. So the S1 deals 90% of attack to a target, plus 13% extra damage per buff. On the alpha, 40% chance to grant herself immunity for 1 turn. On the beta, increased damage boost per buff by 7%. On the S2, deals 110% of attack to a target, grant self buff extension for 2 turns. On the alpha, 50% chance to inflict herself attack up for 2 turns when using a skill with no buffs. On the beta, increases buff duration by 1 turn. On the S3, deals 100% of attack to all enemies, 75% chance to steal their buffs. On the alpha, inflicts herself attack speed up for 1 turn if she has 0 or 1 buff after turn. And then beta adds 1 turn if the buff you stolen has 1 turn left. So what all does this kit mean? It means that on her S3 she's going to steal buffs, on her S2 she's going to extend the duration for that, and on the S1 she's going to do extra damage per buff that she has. And she steals buffs like from everybody, and it applies the remaining buff duration. So if you're using like the alpha, right, let's say you don't get any buffs, then she's going to give herself a buff like regardless, right? And then you can do that too. So she's gonna buff herself regardless if you steal one or not. Like if it gets resisted or anything like that, you're gonna get a buff. If you do get a buff, like, or you have like the accuracy to hit this, then you add 1 turn to the buffs. That way it doesn't run out right after you get it, right? And then on the S2, you can increase that duration even more to keep those buffs, especially if you have really good ones. And on the alpha, you can also give yourself attack up if you don't have any. So you're still keeping up that damage. Now let's say if you have like 3 or 4 buffs, and if you're pretty much consistent at keeping the buffs, then you want to get the beta, then that's 20% extra damage per buff. You could get a lot of damage off on her. I just haven't built her up, but if you play Dislight, you know how strong Chloe was with all those buffs and the amount of damage she did. She is pretty much the same with an AoE attack, S2 that hits 1 target, and then an S1 that hits 1 target. But a really nice character, because dark characters throughout this story, honestly, until you get to chapter 3, you don't really see much that can counter you. So of course you're not going to be doing any bonus damage, but you're also not going to have your damage resisted. So I would say that this character is pretty good for the selective summon. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and move on. All right, so next up we have Melavi. She is a shadow class, and she's going to be the element of fire. Now on this account, I ended up wanting to go with her. Again, like I said, my first account I used Gaffs. So I do like Melavi a lot. She has a lot of AoE, and she has dot damage as well, which is really useful, especially for boss fights, especially if they're a little bit longer, because that dot damage does add up. Anyways, let's go to her abilities. So on her S1, it deals 95% of attack to a target. I believe I have this leveled up, so it might be 90%. But on the alpha, 25% chance to burn the target for 1 turn. On the beta, 35% chance to extend the shortest burn duration by 1 turn if the target is burned. On the S2, I think it's supposed to do 50% of attack to all enemies, and it's going to do a 65% chance to burn them for 2 turns. On the alpha, increase the max stackable burn effect by 1, and on the beta, grant self tipsy. And tipsy increases attack by 10% and burn damage by 5%, and decreases attack by 5% up to 3 stacks. So basically, you up your attack by 30%, decrease it by 15%, and up your burn damage by 15%. So it kind of seems like weird, it's like why was I upping it, but it's just having the amount of attack that it's bonusing. The main thing is that it's also increasing your burn damage, which makes up for that. And then on the S3, deals 90% of attack to all enemies. On the alpha, increase damage by 100% to a target with the most HP. On the beta, 75% chance to burn them for 3 turns, up to 2 stacks. So, honestly, her kit is pretty nice because you have AoE on the S3, AoE on the S2, and then you have your single target, of course, right? But you're also causing burns. Now, I did find something interesting on the dots. There's another character that is shock. So burn hits the target after they take their turn. It hits a little bit harder. It does 20% of attack is burn damage. And honestly, the burn damage can stack up, especially with how much attack you can give her. And if you choose to start stacking your tipsy, it can hurt quite a bit for enemies. I went with the fact that the alpha increases damage by 100% to a target. That means if you're hitting a boss and there's like multiple enemies, the boss is going to get hit for double the damage, which is honestly pretty strong. The S2 is just giving you a straight damage buff. And then the S1, whenever I get to that, I'm most likely going to have it extend the burn durations just to keep them up. But I'm not really focusing on the burns, right? By increasing the stacks, giving the extra burn chance, because I just want straight up damage while I'm going through the story. Now, if there's a way where I can really just exploit the burns and up her attack and the burns like start hitting like honestly at a pretty large like amount, then maybe. But for now, I'm just going for the burst damage, and it seems to be working out, especially the fact you can just hit random enemies for just like double damage. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and move on. All right, so next we have Mintz. She is a shooter. She is water. A really interesting character. I feel she works more so in PvP, but if you like her, if you want her, you can use her through the story. She does have some AoE, but again, just with the debusters she gives, like they're useful. They can help protect you, but I feel it's more of a PvP kit, honestly. So on the S1, deals 80% of attack to a target. On the alpha, accelerates herself in scale with rapid shot level, max 5%. Decelerates the target in scale on the beta with the skill level. On the S2, deals 80% of attack to all enemies, 30% chance to blind them for 1 turn. Blind means that the attack will just do less damage and miss, right? So that can help you, right? 30% chance. On the alpha, you can up that to another 10%, and on the beta, you can increase the damage by 10%. On the S3, deals 90% of attack to all enemies and 70% chance to inflict yourself with attack speed up for 1 turn. On the alpha, increase damage and scale with her attack speed. And then on the beta, increase attack speed up duration by 1 turn. So her kit is honestly, to me, pretty like average. This is probably one of the least favorite characters that I saw in the selective summon, because the scalings are a little low on this. Like giving only herself attack speed up, it's like okay, like if she's faster on the alpha, she can increase her damage, but like gotta really see how much that is. You'd rather just get the attack speed up for the 2 turns, that way she's just faster typically. And then on the S2, the blind has a pretty low chance, and the increased damage is pretty low scale as well. So like I just don't really see this being amazing. And on the S1, you can have her accelerate herself further to turn cycle a lot on the beat, and that's why I say she's a more of a PvP character, because she can just be really fast. Honestly, in the story, that doesn't really matter because enemies are just strong, and you need somebody who can nuke. So honestly, she's not one of my favorite characters. But when we get to the tier list, we will rank her in her proper position. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. All right, so next we have Orslaha. I believe that's her name. She's a shadow with the element of light. Really good character, some really good single target damage, also has dot damage and some AoE in her kit. Really solid pick. On her S1, now I do have this upgraded, so just know the values might be a little off. Deals 90% of attack to a target, 60% chance to shock it for 2 turns. On the alpha, you can increase shock duration by 1 turn, and on the beta, increase chance to shock by 15%. Shock deals 10% of attack as shock damage for a turn, and unable to act with 10% chance where you can pretty much stun them. It does half the damage of burn, but shock procs at the beginning of an enemy's turn, which was really interesting that I saw. On the S2, deals 80% of attack to all enemies, 80% chance to shock them for 3 turns. On the alpha, on crit hit, refreshes shock on the target to 3 turns, up to 2 debuffs within the least duration. And on the beta, increase max stackable shock by 1 turn. And then on the S3, deals 150% of attack to a target. On the alpha, increase damage by 15% per shock stack, and then all shock effects are removed. And on the beta, increase damage by 20%. So, she is honestly like, you can kind of think of it like Ginga in Artery Gear, where basically you want to have the shock stacks, or you can even think about her in, for those of you who played Soul Tide, there was a Lily. She also did the same thing where she did more damage to the target based off of they had shock stacks, right? So a really good case, especially if you can load those shock stacks on enemies and you have like enough of the accuracy to do that and the debuff hit chance, because you can get more increased damage on this than the beta, honestly. And both of these moves here want you to put shock stack on them, so I would probably you know, go with the alpha on this and just try to get as much shock stacks as you can. But again, this is a character who can do AoE damage, single target damage as well, and dot damage. So a really solid pick. Also, she's a light, so she is not resisted by anything until chapter 3. So she's going to be getting just straight up free damage that's unresisted, and you know, of course, she gets hit normally as well, but she won't get hit like any harder than you know, anybody else. So a really solid pick. Let's go ahead and move on. All right, so next up we have Soire. Honestly, she is a really solid unit. She is a slasher. She's water. She has some amazing debuffs from you that honestly nobody else in the cast has. And she has a lot of AoE. With her S1, deals 40% of attack to all enemies. Yes, that seems low, but on the alpha, 20% chance to reduce merciless bombardment cooldown by 1. I believe that's her S3. And on the beta, 40% chance to inflict them with defense down for 1 turn. So you have an AoE attack where you can do AoE defense down. Yes, it's only a 40% chance, but that is a 40% chance to do defense down. I'm not mad at that, and it's on an S1, so you don't have to worry about cooldowns for it. On the S2, deals 110% of attack to a target with a 65% chance to inflict defense down for 2 turns. I have this leveled up to 3, so the chance is increased. I believe it's like 50%. On the alpha, increased chance to defense down by 10%. On the beta, 15% chance to trigger pincer attacks. That's where you can trigger another attack on the S1. But honestly, the alpha is pretty solid. On the S3, deals 110% of attack to all enemies, plus 50% extra damage if an enemy has a shield. Not too many enemies have shields, but like Gaffs hasn't. That's more of like a PvP type of thing, because I haven't really seen too many shields. But anyways, on the alpha, boost damage by 50% to an enemy that has a shield. And then on the beta, ignore shield applied on the target. So the S3 upgrades, but if you're doing PvP and shield meta becomes a thing, you can completely just ignore shields, or you can just do 100% extra damage to it, right? On the S2, increasing the chance of the defense down is going to be nice, because you want to guarantee on that boss, especially for a single target move, that you inflict that defense down, because that is 70% extra damage. And then on the S1, that just gives you extra defense down. Yeah, the if you're in PvP, probably lowering the cooldown of the ult would be nice, right? Because the ult's on a pretty long cooldown, but honestly, getting burst with that defense down is a lot better. And going throughout the story, defense down just kind of helps you get extra damage. Now, is this a character whom I would want to like say would carry me throughout the story and do a lot. No, she is a support. Like her skills don't have that great of scaling. But if you happen to get her, then that's really good. If you do your summons before selective summon and you get a DPS, then possibly I would say yes, grab her. But only grab Soire if you have, you know, done your summons before you did the selective summon and you got a 3-star DPS. Then I would say yes, grab her. So it's like conditional, but not somebody who I would say could help carry you throughout the campaign. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our last one. All right, and so last but not least is Wraith. Honestly, the waifu of the group. She's a interesting character in the fact that she is honestly a PvP character. There is like one boss that I have seen where she is great, and that is the Crucible, because her kit has anti-heal in it, and there's not much healing throughout the campaign from where you're going to be starting at, honestly. But her S1 deals 90% of attack to a target. On the alpha, increased damage by 20% if the target is an unrecoverable. On the beta, 70% chance to inflict the target with unrecoverable for 2 turns. On the S2, deals 80% of attack to all enemies and refreshes their unrecoverable duration to 2 turns. On the alpha, refreshes unrecoverable duration to 3 turns if the enemy is in unrecoverable. On the beta, boosts dealing damage by 30% to healer class, PvP only. On the S3, deals 160% of attack to a target, granting unrecoverable for 2 turns. On the alpha, silences the target and unrecoverable with a chance based on the skill level for 1 turn, plus 17% per level. Okay, so based off the level, you get 17% per level. I believe there's like 4 levels or so, so you can also silence. So the silence is what is really interesting, but again, that's a PvP thing. Really, really hard. Like, you know, an amazing kit for PvP, but this is PvE that I'm mainly like talking because that's what's gonna help you push story. Honestly, like, I wouldn't focus a lot of PvP. Like, we'll make like content for PvP later on. I'm just strictly talking PvE. And this character, yes, I have her. Yes, I've leveled her because I just needed somebody. Yes, she's a dark unit, so she's not getting resisted to, you know, chapter 3, but it's just not gonna help you just, you know, in the long run. Like, I got her while summoning before the selective summon, so that's really the only reason why I have her leveled. But again, not a great character when thinking about that, right? So let's go ahead and conclude all this and put it into the tier list. That way I can give you guys a final ranking for everybody. All right, so now we're to the ranking. So first up, we have Cascarson. So we talked about he has a really high single target kit, right? He can double his damage with his S2 with the buff of his S3. He does lower the defense, but he increases his attack, right? So I would put him in A because you really need pre-cores to make him kind of amazing. You really need his skill upgrades to make him better, and you just won't really have the gear to make him just start one-shotting a lot of stuff to help you, because he doesn't really need to be in too long of a fight because he doesn't have any way to sustain with all of the like lack of AoE damage that he's doing. Again, not bad. Alpha is, I mean, not alpha, but A is going to be above average basically, because B is going to be the average point. So A is not a terrible spot again, but I'm just not going to say he's like just broken or amazing. Now Gaffs does have the ability to sustain himself. He does have the ability to lower his cooldowns. That way you can lower cooldowns of other skills on your characters. So I would put him at an S because he does a high amount of damage, can do his kit very easily. Also, he is a light unit, so he's not resisted like Cascarson until you get to like chapter 3. He can carry you very far. I know this because I've done it. And if I were to have Cascarson in that spot, he just wouldn't be able to sustain himself, lower his cooldown, do his S3 as often, right? So that's pretty much how I would rank him. All right, so up next we have Kipu. So she is a really good character we talked about. She has damage on her S3. She can steal buffs, keep them, up the duration, up the damage that she has. Now, not a lot of the enemies in PvE like campaign use buffs, and you won't really get a lot of the buffs until you get to like harder bosses. So I will rank her higher up for that, but she's slightly conditional to where like she really needs buffs, but then again, if you ascend her, you can give buffs to yourself. So I'll put her at the top of S, right? I definitely wouldn't say like she's SS because there's characters who can go up there, but with the fact that she can steal a buff and it's really effective to do that, especially when you're fighting like specific characters that are bosses, it really helps. But outside of that, she's just kind of average, right? Melavi, I really don't want to do this because I'm pretty much following everybody, but compared to everybody else here, she's going to be an SS. She has AoE, she has burns, she can double the damage, a lot of damage, AoE on both moves. It's just going to be really good for a campaign. Yeah, she's a fire unit, right? And like, you know, Kipu, she's dark, she's not resisted, but this burn damage is just really, really good. And AoE is honestly just one of the strongest things in the campaign. Honestly, just kind of help you push content. All right, now Mintz, unfortunately, because she has a PvP mostly kit and she only does blind and she has like a little bit of AoE and not really high scaling, compared to everybody else, I'm gonna put her as like honestly not somebody you should grab from the selective summon. She just really won't help you. Now, I'm not saying she's terrible when compared to everybody else. I'm not saying she's a terrible character. Just, I'm putting her down here as like, I don't want you guys to go for her if you're looking for a character to grab, because honestly, like, she's like just not as great compared to everybody else. Her kit can't do anything really for you. The blind isn't on a really long turn. Like, the attack speed up is cool, but it's not huge increases there. So I just don't want you guys to grab her. Now, Orslaha, she has the shock. She has the single target damage. She can increase that. She has AoE on her S2. She increases damage on the S1. So I'm going to put her here only because her kit is really easy to use, right? You don't have to have really any conditions compared to Kipu, right? Kipu wants to have buffs like Gaffs. He's single target, so, and yes, he cycles his damage, but she has shock. She can load that onto enemies and boost that by a significant amount. So I'm gonna put her up. She's good for a lot of places in the game, because there's content where Melavi kind of struggles when it comes to like single target fights. What helps her is her S3 when you upgrade it, but Orslaha has that as well. She just doesn't have as much AoE, but again, two really solid characters we have up here. Now Soire, really great character, and I told you she's only great if you get another character, so I'm gonna put her at B, because if you don't have another DPS, then honestly she's not as great because her scalings are honestly pretty low, and she's not gonna carry you through any content. She's just gonna support the character that is carrying you. So again, like I said, if you don't summon another like one of these who are up above, then don't get her. All right, and lastly we have Wraith. You know, if I was judging this off of waifu tier list, then she'd be at the top, but unfortunately we aren't. Again, now her kit is honestly way better than Mintz. She does have a use for the boss on Crucible that does heal itself, but unfortunately the unrecoverable just isn't that great. Now she does have decent scaling, she does have decent damage, but I can't put her up here with Cascarson because Cascarson can hit really hard. So I'm gonna put her in B. I'll put her above Soire because honestly Wraith can handle herself, but just in PvE she's pretty average. But she can handle herself, she can do some decent damage, and Soire again needs somebody. It's just that, yeah, unfortunately Mintz is just down here because she just doesn't have anything really going for herself, honestly. But this is pretty much where I would rank the characters for the selective summon. Now, if you guys feel differently, you can say so in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think. If you did like the video and enjoyed the content, please like this one and subscribe to the channel because I will be making more and more content for Eroica. But I'm so glad that you guys stuck to the end and watched this. You can also catch me on Twitch, streaming this at twitch.tv Lucky Lux Gaming. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, guys. You lucky gamers, have a good one. Lucky Lux out.